The clicker doesn't work though, so I'm going to have to wing that. Anyway, hello, my name is Jessica. Some of you might already know me. That's my information. I'm here to talk about robots taking my job, at least. It's happened many times, and we're going to go through that. Just to get started, though. Oh, sorry? Ah, yay! It works now. Hopefully, I can't go back. Oh, yeah, good. Great. So, a bit about me. I'm a site reliability engineer at Fastly. I have just started this job 2 months ago, so it's still new and exciting, and yes, I'm still drinking the juice. So for those of you who haven't used Fastly, we basically make your applications better for your users by delivering it to various edge locations that we have. We partner with various cloud providers, such as Google Cloud, and it basically makes your applications faster for your users all over the world. If you're interested, we do free developer accounts, so go and have a play with it, see if it can maybe help your application out a bit. Some of our clients are The Guardian, Spotify, New York Times, and other various worldwide. Oh yeah, and GitHub. I'm based in Stockholm, but I'm not from Stockholm. I guess we could play a game later and people can guess where I'm from. Some of you already know the answer to that, so no cheating. I also really like to connect with everyone in the realm of DevOps and engineering and whatnot, so I'm on various Slack groups such as HangOps and Rand's Leadership. Feel free to ping me if you want to chat about various things. Right. So, play. Yeah. No. Let's see if this will work. Okay, great. GIFs. I haven't seen many GIFs yet. And I saw this GIF when I was creating this talk, well, extending this talk, and I really felt like it was very important to include it because basically this can be some people's jobs, I imagine. You're wanting to automate away from this, which is why they actually made this machine, I imagine. But paper clips are great, right? They have so many uses. They keep your papers together, hopefully. They can pick locks. And during an insomnia episode induced by Wikipedia, I found out that apparently it was also a sign of protest here in Norway during World War II, to protest the Nazi occupation, I hear. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I mean, the paperclip, though, started out as what? Usually we used to tie things together with string. And then we had pins, because the straight pin was created before that. And then we'd bend them just to keep things together. And then, this came along when they started mass producing it in Britain, I think, in around the 1870s or so. And it's still in our lives today, even though it was we've been using it for so many years. Right. So from just the simple paperclip, we have obviously been trying to make things better. We have always been trying to get rid of some really, really repetitive menial tasks, right? So it's been going on for a while throughout things. These are some of the things that we've done, and I can guarantee you, you're probably wondering, lighters came before matches? Yes, by about 3 years. And it's matches as we know it, so yeah. But we have been trying to improve on things that we have already been doing. Before the horse and carriage, there was other less exciting ways of getting around. And then even between car and the self-driving car that we're seeing kind of in the near future, there's been so many improvements to try and get to that point. So you might be wondering, where's the robots? Well, this gets me to our next section. We're going to talk about biology and robots because, well, I like telling stories. And my introduction to robots taking over my job was when I was doing my undergrad at university. I did a CS undergrad, but my professor, well, my supervisor really loved working with other disciplines, and they wanted to constantly be building bridges with other sciences. So maybe that's where I got into DevOps originally. And the professors that I was working with within the biology department were kind of eccentric, and they really wanted to push further. They wanted to get rid of some of the tasks that they were having to do every single day with lab techs and things like that. I don't know who here is familiar with like wet labs and the biological sciences, but it's really tedious, and it's very, even though they have really advanced things, like so many machines that are producing so much data that even us as engineers possibly have no idea. I mean, they're producing gigabytes and gigabytes just on like, RNA structures and various other things. But most of their interactions with their wet lab is done with a notepad that they have to check in when they go into the wet lab and then check out and put back so that, sorry, other way around, so that because it belongs to the university or institution, okay? So a lot of professors and others, research scientists and lab techs and whatnot are trying to actually, automate away and actually get more technology within the wet labs. So to me, robots is kind of a moving goalpost. We are always trying to get rid of some of our tasks, and we're trying to put them onto robots. So, more about my crazy, well, not really crazy, that's ableism, but my very interesting professors. So, they decided to name their robots Adam and Eve, and this was a long time ago, and Adam and Eve basically, I guess they like to, wind up some religious folks, but yeah, they were robots, but not like this robot by any means. It was actually more like that. But Adam and Eve were really good at doing the repetitive, precision-based tasks that they needed. Going and, this solution needs to be added to this at this temperature, and it needs to be done exactly 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 39 seconds after the last one was done. And so they ended up being able to do that and reducing the workload of lots of lab techs. But they didn't replace the lab techs because they were relatively stupid, okay? They still needed lots of human guidance. They were relatively, mundane. They couldn't really operate outside of what they were meant to be doing. I don't know if anybody here watches Rick and Morty, but think of the butter robot. So yeah. Right, so Ross King, one of the scientists that has been doing loads of work on this, actually said, with a computer, all the results and conclusions and structure are expressed in logic and can be uniformly be understood by other researchers. And that was, to me, we want to be able to share our data. When you have a new person coming on your team, you want them to understand what data they're reading, right? Right. So keeping in line with my biology past, I have a little story about one of my friends. She's a neuroscientist. We met back in, during our very first day at undergrad, and she was already from day one, she was like, I'm going to go and get my PhD, and it's going to be in neuroscience. I'm going to be a neuroscientist, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to be really good at it because I want to, cure Alzheimer's or dementia or, other brain issues. And her dad was a neuroscientist. It was in the family. She's always strived to be that. So she goes to school. She works hard. Years later, she finally gets her PhD from UCL. And she gets a postdoc fellowship at a university halfway across the world. She's so excited. Gets there, and suddenly feels that she can't perform because her lab work, she struggles to do the precision lab work that she's been doing for so many years, suddenly, out of nowhere. Getting like less than a millimeter thin, like brain slices to run tests on and everything. She kind of identifies with Dr. Strange because, well, yeah, great changes coming into her future, seeing that she's now looking at going into bioinformatics, and I'm helping her out with like R and other various things. And she's really, really getting on to how can she get all of that data. It's great. I love it. So, right. So back to us here today, and bonus points for anybody who gets all of my really shitty puns, okay? So I'm an engineer now today. As I said previously, I'm a site reliability engineer, so I'm currently making sure that the internet works. But you all have different problems than I do. And so I want to make this as relatable as possible. So my previous job, I was given a greenfield project. And this never happens, okay? I don't think I'm ever going to see something like this ever again. Maybe I can wish for it and hope for it, but yeah. So I was given this great project spec. I was going to be working with one other lead on building it from the ground up. It was great. The company that we were building it for had no engineering know-how whatsoever. They had no previous experience with any sort of engineering setup. They had really old systems that they were wanting to eventually migrate from, so we had to interact with those, but they were really simple. Okay? And, they basically were just like, you know what? Do what you want. And I was just like, oh my God, the dream, it's coming. Anyway, so, greenfields, bliss, isn't it? Oh God, sorry, I'm gonna stop with the bad puns. That's Bliss, for anybody who was wondering. It's a place in California. It's also the Windows screen. But yeah, so I could build this project with any tool that I wanted. I had no limitations. There was, it was really, really a free-for-all. And with that, there was lots of problems. So I was working with a colleague who I did most of the back-end stuff, making sure that the infrastructure was working. How are we going to actually, get code into production? How are we going to test it? How are we going to make sure that we're delivering something good? And he was in charge of more of the, we're going to use JavaScript with these things, and like NPM and other stuff. And so what we came up with, because it's always a group effort, is a relatively simple thing, in my opinion, because I wanted it to be simple. The goal of this whole thing was, by the way, I only had 3 months at 50% time to deliver this. And they if you noticed in the previous slide, they also wanted it to start testing it in a month. So it had to be done quickly and relatively simply. So in this organization, they were a smaller organization within a larger broadcasting house. So I was talking with the engineers there to see what they were up to. What are they interested? Where are they going with their infrastructure and these sorts of things? And they kept talking about AWS quite a lot. AWS. Okay, but have we made the move to AWS yet? No. Okay, well, that was my job. It was actually, I still want those 2 weeks of my life back, setting up we were external to this company, and then they had an external IT consultancy that managed all their IT, and then they also had an external company managing their network. It was fun. Not. So I spent like 2 weeks, I think, actually trying to get their internal network to speak with AWS. And it was mostly because I had no control over anything. So it was really, really frustrating to just be like, you need to do this. I don't have access to this, but please do it. But yeah, anyway, and then I had lots of engineers from the parent organization kind of going, did you get it set up yet? Did you get it set up yet? Because once you do, we want to like start doing that as well. And it's like, why do I have to do this? Consultants. So yeah, anyway. So what I wanted to make sure is definitely the last thing on here. I wanted to make sure that people were going to use this after I was done. Because after that 3 months, I had no guarantee that I was going to continue on that project or that I was going to have any sort of amount of time to actually help them when something was down or whatever issue you can possibly imagine with operations, right? So yeah, what ended up happening though was that with Travis CI and GitHub, and yes, I did go and look at about 10 different CI things, but it needed to be hosted by a different company because we didn't have any of our own internal networks, so we didn't do Jenkins or any of the other like Drone and some other ones. And back then, because this was a while ago, Circle CI wasn't the best, but I've heard it's improved. And so everything just started working. All of Travis CI would kick off when people were pushing to stage or pushing to production, and the developers just came to me and they were just like, what is going on? I'm getting all these messages. Things are just working. Stage is just happening. What's happening? It just works. I don't have to do anything. And it's like, that's the point. Because developers aren't going to use your tools if they make, one, if they don't work, and two, if they make them do a million other things to get them to work. So, right. No ops. I know this is a trendy word and everything, and a lot of people probably get cringe, or maybe they're like, yes, I want that. But why aren't you going through? It's giving me there we go. It's more like not so much ops, because I was still having to help them out, They knew when something was wrong, okay? It would show up in red, and they're like, something's broken. But that happened rarely, so it would be maybe 1 hour every few weeks. And this was when we had actually increased all of our, the traffic to the site. The developers actually knew how to run it and take care of the infrastructure. And they knew also when something was seriously wrong. So greenfield projects don't usually happen very often. And this one was greenfield because for me, when I didn't have to actually sit down with SecOps and sit there and go, okay, so what are our security requirements? I was asking them, what are the security requirements? And they were just like, what, security? Secure, but but not all projects are the same. What I've done in this project is not what I'm telling you that you should go and definitely do on your next project, because chances are it's probably not going to work out so well. But it did in this case. So anyway, so this was one example of me trying to replace my job and my existence on a project, mostly because I just knew that I wasn't going to have time to do it later. And I want to kind of bring this back to, again, something that you can take away as engineers. And with automation and with trying to offload your repetitive tasks that are very, very error-prone usually, trust me, I have made so many errors while just going and like copying and pasting the same command on various different servers, because you're just like, okay, when will this be done? But humans are error prone. But when you're looking at a new project or a new team or a new company, a lot of engineers go in and they look at the process from point A to point B to point Z, whichever. And you usually end up going and looking at something that's already been automated. Okay? I can see a few knowing glances, right? So, at my current job, when I joined, it was, there's always the onboarding process of trying to figure out like this new place, you're trying to figure out what's going on, okay? And one thing that I noticed was that there's a tool that has been around at Fastly for years. It's called barrel roll. And we have thousands of nodes throughout the world. And barrel roll is a very mediocre tool, admittedly. But it's really good at safely draining caches and putting new software on them and fixing them and doing various other like maintenance activities and upgrading different packages and whatnot. But what I also found out is that most SREs and engineers and whatnot, when they had to interact with barrel roll, they were just like, oh my God. And can you guess what language it was written in? Perl. So I think most people actually got a bit upset because they would see it and they're like, oh my God, Perl, I can make this better. I can do this better. I can do this whole entire functionality of this tool that somebody years ago when we really need this and I'm going to make it, and they did a really good job at it for that time, and it's still in use and it still does the job perfectly adequately, okay? But most engineers go, like, I want to change that because they have a thing against Perl or whatever. And I see this happen in a lot of organizations. We have our feelings towards things. Oh, I'm an AWS person, I'm a Chef person, I'm a Puppet person, I'm a this person. When really we should be looking at, is the tool the right tool for the job? Some jobs require a hammer. Some require a screwdriver. That doesn't mean that one of them is better or worse than the other. It's just, it's the right tool for the job. So please, please, don't take your extra baggage. I mean, we were talking about relationships previously. Don't take your extra baggage to your next, project or whatever. When you start looking at the things that, I'm sorry, why isn't this working again? There we go. When you start actually looking at extracting data and perfecting your workflows, as like this is the obvious next step of when you're automating, you're going to start being able to build better things, because you're going to be, these sorts of tasks are not something that you need to think about. And I'm not a psychology major, but do we have any chess players here? Okay, a lot less than I thought, actually. Come on. Okay. So I'm not a chess player either. It's like one of those bucket list things for me. I hope to do it someday. But years ago, somebody was looking at what we can retain in our memory, okay? And usually this comes down to chunking phenomena, which is you have about 7 plus or minus-ish in your working memory. And this can be, okay, I need to SSH into this server, and then I need to run this, and then I need to do that, and then reboot, and then that's going to result in this, right? Or you can be like, I'm going to run this chef, and I'm going to update with our chef server, and it's going to go and do all of that for me on all the thousands of nodes, right? And then you can start thinking about bigger problems in the future, rather than step 1, step 2, step 3. And this is something that they've found mainly by studying chess players, because the difference between a novice chess player and a grandmaster at chess, the grandmasters are actually thinking about strategies and like, oh, if I deploy this like really complex move, or then we're looking at so many different operations into the future. Anyway, so lots of information, and some of the takeaways that I want you to take from this talk is that, one, robots are going to take your job. I've had it happen multiple times, but it's only because you're going to do it, okay? And you shouldn't be afraid of that. Robots, they still have their issues. They're not really good at being very human, okay? They still need us. We're not talking about AI. That's, but yeah. And then if you're human, if you're an engineer, you should be trying to perfect your processes and moving them forward. It's just something that we do as humans. Right. And then, questions? Great, we'll do it in an open space. That's me.